reached Copenhagen's bazaar at 4 o'clock in the afternoon, he had no idea where to go or what to do. He searched and sauntered down the city center streets, same as during his first visit to Copenhagen's bazaar, same as his second visit, same as his third, same as every time he'd come. Lonely, no cash, no currency, a stranger, a wandering child, his eyes searching the stores and their colorful displays, his glance lingering on the golden 6- and 11-story apartment buildings. Eager, thirsty, he loosed the sling of his glance at the strawberry-blonde, silken-haired girls when he could. And when he tired, he sat down on a cold garden bench. Rested, he stood to walk once more, eyes roving, exploring, until he exhausted himself again. And in the end, when he made it back to the walking district along the shore to Vesterport, he felt a fatal strangeness and solitude. A solitude and strangeness that gnawed noisily on his innermost soul. And back on the ship, on the way back to the island, he heard the refugees, some in broken English, others in Farsi and Arabic, insulting the Danish people, spitting on Denmark's weather. One of the Iranian refugees, who seemed more educated than all of them, turned to a Lebanese refugee and said in English, Ibn Battuta, on page 285 of his travel journal, wrote, "Denmark has foul language, foul weather, and foul manners." The raucous, foul-mouthed refugees filled him with disgust. Not even back in the island's cramped dining hall, not even mid-bite did they leave off from their fighting, rioting, and insulting. So strange. So really, why had Miss Annalie, the supervisor of the island's refugees, commented the other night, "You have a lovely name." So strange. Miss Annalie, as soon as they met, with her lovely smile, approached him to ask, "What's your name?" He had said, "Sherzad." Miss Annalie, always curious, then asked, "Sherzad, and does that mean anything in Kurdish?" "Yes." "And what does it mean?" "A lion-hearted man." "I still don't get it. That woman, why did she say, 'You have a lovely name'?" Was she just trying to show a refugee kindness? Yes, perhaps, so that at least for a moment or two the clouds of the disquiet and foreignness he felt would clear. Miss Annalie, before the meeting she commented on his name, had glanced at him a few times with growing curiosity. The first time he had stood alone on the beach, leaning against an old shipwreck, dispirited, despondent, gazing at the far-flung horizon of the Baltic Sea, his eyes brimming with foreignness. Suddenly, Miss Annalie brushed past him, taking in his sorrow-wracked posture with eyes that held questions, compassion, and mercy. The second time he was on the building's rooftop, once again on his own, a thick black coat draped over his shoulders. He sat on some piled gravel, huddled against the cold, head bowed as he contemplated a feeble, bony chicken pecking the ground beside the gravel, searching for worms or grain. Just then, Miss Annalie passed by with a sisterly glance, full of compassion and the loveliest smile. Yes, it all comes down to this. Various people in various states of loneliness and brokenness and misery, getting pitied by others. Ah, poor Sherzad. 29 years. 29 years full of comfort, courage, and love. 29 years he had lived, full of delight and pride. And so, that's that. Today, on this far-flung island, far from his country, far from his childhood, far from the paradise of his youth, miserable, he weeps over his solitude and brokenness. A sigh of remorse escaped him as he hung his head and left the window to sit at the table in the middle of the room. There was a small mirror on the table, propped up next to an apple, and a slice of grilled chicken. Today, in the dining hall at lunch, as at every other meal, he couldn't help but be disgusted by the refugees' constant riot. A Lebanese refugee at the table picked a fight with a Sri Lankan refugee. They fell on each other, a fight broke out, and though he knew he couldn't finish his salad, he packed his slice of grilled chicken and his apple in saran wrap, put them in a bag, and got up. He took them back to his room and put them on the table. Sitting, silent, he stared at the slice of chicken and the apple in front of him. And suddenly, he grinned. Suddenly, he was a kid again. He saw himself clearly walking through their orchard with his mother. A naughty boy, as he walked, he kicked the apples that had fallen, whenever his feet could reach. His mother scolded him tenderly. "Sherzad, my boy, this is a sin. Stop kicking the apples." And here, now today, after all those many years, on this Arctic island, in the middle of nowhere, his daily lunch is always a slice of chicken and just one single apple. Just a single apple.
My name is Michelle Mirabella, and I'll be reading my translation of A Body by Chilean author Catalina Infante. A Body was originally published by Columbia Journal and is now part of Deep Film's inaugural Best Literary Translations anthology. A Body. We found a body in the bathroom. It wasn't wearing any underwear. It wasn't wearing any clothing at all. The body was wet, face down. Its arm was twisted with the palm of its hand toward the ceiling. We could hear the shower running from the moment we entered the bedroom, or maybe even before that, from the moment we opened the apartment door, using the key the building super kept on hand for emergencies. Maybe that body was in the habit of showering with the door open. Maybe it didn't manage to close the door, or it wanted to leave the water running while walking around naked. Who knows? Here, I could skip to the part where later, in the hospital, they told us that the body had high blood pressure, that it had suffered a heart attack, which could have been avoided if it had taken care of itself. But some memories surfaced between the bathroom and the hospital that I don't want to gloss over. Neither of us cried when we saw it. My sister just took the body and, struggling, turned it over. She laid it on the floor on its back. Its eyes were closed and its brow was split open. She took her phone out of her backpack, dialed a number, deleted it, then dialed another. Who knows who she was trying to reach as I looked at the split open brow of a face I could hardly recognize. I looked at that large white body, the scars on its stomach. I wondered if that body was dead, if it would fall to us to dress it, to put on the makeup. I wondered if it had any suits, because bodies wear suits when they're placed in coffins. I wondered if bodies found like this had to be taken to the hospital, if that's what was done. Or if we could simply put it in the car and bring it to the police or a funeral home. The only one I know of came to mind, a vague image of a half-lit neon sign on the corner of Bustamante or Vicuña Maquena. I used to mix those two streets up when I was a girl. I got in touch with Susanna and I asked her to call an ambulance, my sister said. I didn't want to ask her why she didn't just call an ambulance herself, because I wouldn't know how to call one either, which number to dial. I also wouldn't know where to tell them to go, whether to the hospital, a funeral home, Susanna's house. I also wouldn't know how to explain the body, why it was there, sprawled out on a bathroom floor. I couldn't even say if it was dead or not. Here, I could skip this part and jump to when later we were in the waiting area at Salvador Hospital, hoping that a doctor would speak with us. I could talk about how the emergency room was flooded due to a clogged toilet, and that the pee smell connected us with a state more profound than any silence, fear, or introspection. I could continue the story from there. It would be easier, but there were other memories in that bathroom, scenes my sister and I had blocked out. She kept her gaze locked on her phone. She didn't want to look me in the eye, stiff before an unclothed body that I hadn't seen in over 15 years, and that she had visited behind my back these past few weeks. We were reminded then of a scene, both of us at the same time. We didn't just look alike physically to the point of confusion. We also thought in the same way, felt nearly the same way, had the same memories. Or at least that's what I believed. In that memory, the two of us are there many years ago in a car with our matching pajamas, as that body drives slowly down Vicuña Mackenna or Bustamante. The lights from the signs stream through our eyelids, painting our faces in shades of red, blue, and orange. Here, I could pull us out of that bathroom and jump right into describing our hermetic mouths, standing in a corner of that room which reeked of pee. But other memories came, before the building super and some neighbors showed up, before the paramedics struggled to lift the body onto the stretcher and then into the ambulance, before arriving at Salvador Hospital, and before an aspiring doctor, no older than 27, told us in the middle of the night that the body had suffered a heart attack. As my sister stared at her phone, we were reminded of that scene in silence. I don't know how or in what order the scene must have come to my sister's mind, but in mine, I recalled how that body pulled open our covers in the middle of the night, how it secretly put us in the car, how it drove slowly down that street full of lights, how it parked in a small alleyway outside Susana's house, how we feigned sleep, afraid to open our eyes, terrified to talk to each other, pretending to fall into a deep sleep until we actually did. The next day, we woke up at Susana's, asking no questions, because we children didn't ask questions. Over the years, we accepted that night as a dream that we never spoke of. And while I observed that body whose face I hardly remembered, my sister didn't cry, but she did tell me that this body had contacted her a few weeks ago, that it wanted to see the two of us, that that night should have been so different, that that afternoon she and the body talked about some trivial topics along with others that were a bit confusing, that it had asked her for us to forgive it for abandoning us like that it had wanted so much to see the two of us. You can't forgive a body you hardly know, I said to my sister. Then she did cry, as if she were saying goodbye. I tried to do it too, the crying, but I couldn't. So here's where I can tell the part about how they took the body to an operating room, that we waited suspended in the pee smell of that place, that my sister's clothes were stained and I remained stiff among the people. That after a few hours, the doctor came out and explained to us that it had been a heart attack, that it could have been avoided if it had cared for itself, that the only thing left to do was to contact a funeral home, that they had the information for one nearby, on Bustamante or Vicuña Mackenna.
تێگەشتنا زارۆکە واجدە خێر و پیسە خوارزیگە منە 5 ساڵی شڕۆناهیا دەریدە تێ گوبۆقەکە پیڤازە بەرمامی مدد مینێ کۆخکا وی بروسکی وەرن ئەژدەهایەکی ئەڤرەشۆک باخێ مەدە هیچ تاتا خواد جوم وەکە گۆلگەکی نوهاتی ئەس خۆ چەندێکم دا ببینم کانی ئەس جاوێت خۆت گێرم وتپرسم دەستێ خۆ سۆندا هەشین دەتینێ و المدرەشی ئەس خۆ چەندێکم زیکێ خانی وەرپی خۆ دەری بێڤەدت
A child's perception. My 5-year-old niece ripples in the light of the doorway, while my uncle chokes on the stem of a green onion. Come see, we have a water dragon in our garden, she says. My uncle's cough thunders. I jump up to see, chewing on a potato wedge like a contented calf. "Where is it?" I ask, looking around. She grabs the green hose and sprays me. I jump back into the house and slam the door shut.
I am Maurice Rodriguez, and I'll be reading my translation of Vito Apüshana's poem, Bird Women. Before doing so, I just want to briefly touch on my experience translating an indigenous text. Although the author resides in the same country as my own family, La Guajira feels like a world away from Medellin, and even further from where I live in the States. Acknowledging how wide this distance is was integral to my approach to the text. After all, I'm an American translator who just so happens to share a diverse language with the author, but before actually immersing myself in his work, I, like most Colombians, had a very limited understanding of what occurred within that northernmost peninsula. What I knew of the Wayu, who've inhabited that land for centuries, was defined only by hardship. Poverty, drought, exploitation, none of which are by coincidence or accident. State abandonment and the encouraged extraction of natural resources, led by some of the largest coal mines on our planet, accelerate water shortages and exacerbate the harsh conditions of La Guajira. This much I knew, but a land and its people are so much more than what they endure. They are also laughter, dreams, practices, customs, stories, memories, desires, the flora and fauna, among so much more. Thus, to translate Apüshana's work, which preserves the Wayu language in an act of resistance, meant that I first needed to understand that as well. Because just as a land and a people are more than what they endure, language too is more than the granular rules of syntax and grammar we navigate. Language is also a way of thinking, a way of life. Welcoming this philosophy has by far been the most rewarding part of translating Apüshana's work, and I hope that by doing so I've drawn our shores just a little closer together. And with that said, I will now read my translation of Bird Women by Vito Apüshana. One afternoon, I happened to see two curlews running. They passed swiftly by my canopy singing, Lu Luluma, Lu Luluma. There was moon over the red resting of the sun, and I saw them get lost on the road that goes to the Hagé of Mariro. Late at night, a dream occurred within me, filled with bird women. I was Hiru Witush, the Asulejo woman, knitting with all the colors of time. Hiru Wawachi, the dove woman, was calling her children, bring life here, bring life here. Hiru Shati, the owl woman, was stalking from the fire of her eyes the desired man. Hiru Chunu, the hummingbird woman, was restoring the flowers of the forgotten dreams, many birds and many women. Hiru Karai, the curlew woman, over there swollen with omens in every beat of her heart. Hiru Wului, the torpio woman, was sharing the cool water of laughter. Hiru Isho, the cardinal woman, was bearing the environment on her ash-red wings. When I woke up, I told my mother about the dream and she smiled without looking at me. Ah, she is a Wain Pirai. And since then, I have been discovering the hidden feathers of the women who shelter us. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Anita Gopalan. I'm so delighted that my translation of the story The Funeral by Geet Chaturvedi has been featured in the Best Literary Translations Anthology 2024. This is especially gratifying for me because my translations of Geet's works have seen more publication in the US than in India. So it feels really fantastic to be included in the anthology. First, I'll read a short excerpt from the story in English, followed by a smaller passage in the original language, which is Hindi, to showcase how beautiful Hindi as a language sounds. The Funeral by Geet Chaturvedi, translated from the Hindi by Anita Gopalan. It was a good-looking corpse, shrouded completely in sheets. Only the face was visible, with cotton in the nostrils. This was the first time I had seen a dead body up close. Auntie was standing, the picture of stillness, the way she had sat on the library steps, the way she had stood under the lamppost, gazing attentively at the face of the deceased, hands respectfully clasped, perhaps murmuring a prayer to herself. There was something reverential in her manner that drew people closer, and we all huddled around the deceased, our heads bowed, gazing at his face. Suddenly it seemed as if the lips of the dead fluttered. We were startled into wakefulness. I looked at Auntie. She was standing as before, motionless, wooden. But several of us had seen the corpse's lips flutter momentarily. The lips had parted for a moment, then closed. The respectful silence of a moment earlier gave way to commotion. People were astounded. They turned to each other, wanting to confirm what they had just witnessed. Lips moved, right? The dead man's lips fluttered. I saw it, did you? I did. Me too. Yes, yes. His lips opened and closed. Yes. A boy hurriedly bent over the body, removing the cotton from the nostrils. He waved his finger under them, feeling for any breath, any life. It looks as if Abba's lips fluttered. Call the doctor, please. Hurry. Let him check again. The woman in white cried with nervous haste. She was his daughter. A doctor was already there. Swiftly he placed the end of his stethoscope to the chest, searching for a pulse. Then he waved his finger under the nostrils. He repeated the same examination 4 or 5 times, and then he shook his head. But his lips moved, insisted the daughter. The doctor shook his head again. Despite the doctor's refutation, people still discussed how for a fleeting moment the corpse's lips had fluttered. Slowly the cries of excitement died down. In the arpeggios of fading chatter, people started leaving. The dead body was ready for its final journey. Rosa Auntie, who up until then had stood like a statue, stirred. The space left behind by the corpse emptied into her. Her hands, now embracing herself, were just as they had been by the lamppost, as if holding a memory open. She took 2 steps back, and hands folded in namaste, offered a silent gesture of mourning to everyone present, who responded in turn by bringing their palms together. Then, clutching my hand, Rosa Auntie slowly made her way back outside. It was late evening. वह एक सुंदर लाश थी, पूरी तरह ढकी हुई. सिर्फ उसका चेहरा खुला था, नाक में कपास. मैं पहली बार किसी लाश को इतना करीब से देख रहा था. आंटी स्थिर मूर्ति की तरह वहां खड़ी थी, जैसे वह लाइब्रेरी की सीढ़ियों पर बैठी थी, जैसे वह लैंप पोस्ट के नीचे खड़ी थी. सम्मान की मुद्रा में उनके दोनों हाथ पेट के आगे बंधे हुए थे. मैं भी उन्हीं की तरह खड़ा लाश को देख रहा था. आंटी मन ही मन शायद प्रार्थना कर रही थी. उन्हें इस तरह खड़ा देख कुछ लोग और भी करीब आ गए और उसी मुद्रा में लाश के चारों ओर खड़े हो गए. तभी अचानक ऐसा लगा कि लाश के होंठ हिले. हम सब चौंक गए. मैंने आंटी का चेहरा देखा. वह उसी तरह निस्तब्ध खड़ी थी, उसी तरह मौन. पर हम सब ने महसूस किया था कि लाश के होंठ हिले हैं। एक पल के लिए वे खुले और बंद हुए। वहां हलचल मच गई। वहां खड़े लोगों ने एक दूसरे से पूछा, होंठ हिले ना? ऐसा लगा जैसे इनके होंठ हिले ना? मैंने देखा, वे खुले और बंद हुए। हाँ, एक नौजवान झुका। उसने लाश के नथुनों से कपास निकाल दिया और वहां उंगली रखकर उसकी सांसों का अंदाजा लेने लगा। सफेद कपड़ों वाली वह महिला बोली, ऐसा लगा जैसे आबा के होंठ हिले हैं। एक बार डॉक्टर को बुला लो, फिर से चेक करा ले। वह उनकी बेटी थी। डॉक्टर सामने ही था। आनन फानन उसने कुछ बुनियादी चीज़ें चेक की, दिल पर आला लगाया, नब्ज टटोली, नाक के आसपास उंगली फिराई। एक ही जांच उसने 4-5 बार दोहराई और नकार में सिर हिला दिया। उसकी बेटी ने कहा, लेकिन हिले थे। डॉक्टर ने सिर झुकाए, फिर इनकार कर दिया। Even if you don't understand the words of a foreign tongue, I'm sure the sound alone can enchant and provide some understanding. Keith's narrative is rich with such evocative sounds. In this story, a strange musicality permeates the text. The clacking of the cane, the oppressive heat of Mumbai, the sound of longing, the sound of silence. In a world filled with sensationalism, Geeth's nuanced, not so loud work, touching upon themes close to our hearts, culminates to take on an enormous new meaning towards the end. His ability to articulate ideas with flair and his knowledge of the language are impressive. No wonder he stands as one of the most important and widely read contemporary Hindi writers. Here's a writer whose works are deeply connected with the linguistic patterns of Hindi. And here's a translator whose own native language is not English as well. But then, English has never been an alien language to us Indians. Therefore, there is this double desire in me to satisfy the English-speaking natives as well as the English-speaking non-natives. I know from my experience of having published numerous translations, especially in the US, that I have to make choices. And at the same time, my upbringing and instinct seem to cross over to the original author. In the funeral, for example, the elderly woman wants to confirm if all the roses are red in color. So she says, all red roses, no? She ends with no, which is reflective in the story of the Anglo-Indian linguistic background of the character, ending with no for confirmation. You're attending Satjoti festival now? All red roses now? Here I let the original's culture to seep in, and how glad I felt then. There have been many gladsome memories during this translation journey. I remember there was this lovely poem by Geet Chaturvedi that I had translated with the lines, your blindness is the color green, the color of my blindness is you. Later I wanted to change the second line to, my blindness is colored you. I wanted it to be, your blindness is colored green, my blindness is colored you, since I thought it went better with the overall flow of the poem. But my editor, who also taught experimental poets of color, said, I actually would argue to keep it, Anita, the color of my blindness is you, because it has a nice resonance to the color of water. They left it at that. It dawned on me later that they were referring to the book, The Color of Water by James McBride. And I thought, what a beautiful way of looking at things. The world we see indeed depends on where we are perched. That's how Geet eloquently puts it in the story. How true it is, and how enchanting this endeavor called translation can be.
I have a collection of powerful objects by Jesus Amalio Lugo, first published in copper nickel. I have a collection of powerful objects from different celestial sources. A rosary of fluorescent plastic, a letter from my dead father, various birthday cards, a pearl that is the moon, only my friends and I know, a paraplegic turtle named Vertigo who sleeps beside my cousin, a compass that, in spite of magnetism, points south, and a notebook where I try, truthfully, to write without literary intentions. All of my objects are legacies of God. What is God? I get a bit tangled up when explaining my faith. What if I'm an atheist? I don't believe because I believe. My beliefs are so many that I might have messianic tendencies. I believe in the effectiveness of my sister Miriam praying the rosary in the middle of 3 p.m. traffic. I believe in the certainty of my other sister, Milagro, who believes she speaks with God when she closes her eyes. I believe in my mother taming enemies with her holy card of the Lion Saint. I believe in Nadia's Buddhism. God works better if we breathe from the belly. I believe in box flowers, Cayuna vulgaris and minimalist gratuitus, and more chocolate 4 times a day before sleep. I believe in the aging women who dance like teenagers every Thursday at 7. I believe in Mrs. Ada and her Sunday prayers and Maraven. I believe in the tasks that my father entrusts to me when I dream. I believe that, when I was 11, I saw a fairy trapped in the power lines in front of my house. And yes, I confess before you brothers of science and power that I believe in a pair of Bible verses and 2 or 3 poetry collections. No, I am not religious, but when they sing my country's anthem, it's like prayer. When I speak of my people in their Marquesian situations, I preach. When I speak of my friends and family with their divine eccentricities, I am not an immigrant, I am a missionary. Because God is all of the people that love me, God is all of those I love, and if my name is Jesus, it's because my Father is God, as are my mother and my sisters, Jehovah, Yahweh, Patricia, Mariana, Angelica, Andreas, and Anna. So numerous are their names, uncountable their miracles. No, I am not religious, but each of their words is a new verse in my testament. A moment with them, another aggregate to my sacred memory. That's why I ask you, Lord, that if for having a sinful and reckless mind I fall back into hell, protect the many hands that would burn to lift me out. Thank you.
The Secret by Enrique Villasis. Newly molded, it descended to the waters. In its new life, it established itself in the sea. It left its apprehensions by the shore with its old skin. It had no view in the deep aside from the slumbering darkness. Stones and dead coral were skulls of an unfathomable beast, which later heaved and yawned as the undertow swept. It hoped that an eel might dart out from the crevices. What else was venom for? Solitude was far more fatal.
Tagiwalo. Bagong hunos siya nang lumusong sa lawod. Saligan niya sa pagbabagong buhay ang dagat. Iniwan na niya ang pangamba sa pangpang kasama ang lumang balat. Wala siyang ibang pangitain sa ilalim kundi natutulog na lagim. Bungo ng hindi kilalang halimaw, ang mga batot patay na korales na maya't mayay bumabalikwas at napapahikab sa pagyugyog ng alon. Umaasa siyang may pupuslit na palos mula sa mga butas. Tanging siya lamang ang nakikita ng libu-libong bula. Ano pa nga ba ang silbi ng kamandag? Mas higit pa ngang mapanganib ang pag-iisa.
All it wanted most was to find companionship. Here was a pile of old skin, a recognizable repugnance. The gash it got by slipping on an old rock didn't even heal. As before, it started again to believe in uncertainty.
Higit niyang ninais na mahanap ang mga kasama. Naririto ang tumpok ng mga pinaglumaang balat, ang mga kilalang lansa. Hindi mahilom-hilom ang paghiwa ng basa niyang pagdaan sa matandang bato. Katulad ng dati, ang muli niyang pananalig sa kawalang katiyakan.
The humid sea was brewing on his skin. Here, at the surface of a wide stone, at the mouth of a cave, it chose to stay. Not far off, the sound of the cord and the eastern wind flocking, a hat flapping. There was a chill in the wind when it flew, and among the waves, it will be one with its own reflection. It's easy to say that each gust was proof to the existence of spite, that there were angels that crossed the mind, picking up unfulfilled wishes, collecting and releasing them as whirlwinds or typhoons. Meanwhile, the secret will endure the overgrowth of hisses, a cry like in a duet. Only then could it feel its own breath again.
Namumulaklak ang alinsangang dagat sa kanyang balat. Dito, sa hapag ng malaking bato, sa bunganga ng kuweba. Pinili niya ang manatili. Sa hindi kalayuan ang salimbayan ng tinig ng kwerdas at amihan. Pumapagaspas ang sombrero, may nginig sa hangin ng ito'y liparin, at sa alon, makakaisa nito ang sariling refleksyon. Kay daling sabihin ng bawat ihip ay patunay ng eksistensiya ng hinanakit na may mga anghel na tumatawid sa malay, pinupulot ang hindi natutupad sa mga ninanais, iniipon at pinapakawalan bilang ipo-ipo o bagyo. Samantala, titindig ang tagiwalo sa pagtabal ng agaas, sumisigasing tila nakikipagdueto. Noon lamang niya muli naramdaman ang sariling hininga.
An old legend. A sage was caged and hung on the lowest mangrove tree from a distant island. His crime was that he taught the old prayers to the parrots. It was there he learned that one could write on a living crate's skin. Every night after writing, he was afflicted by a fever. A part of his soul was inscribed in the very letters, scraped and peeled from the sea snake's scale, and he could watch it swim farther away. At the center of his eye, the words glistened in the heat and brine. This was the only way he knew how to quench a desire shawled by sorrow. He charted the map underneath his prison, and like a cartographer, he plotted the landmarks according to their own purpose and history. And every so often, he determined it by the movement of his shadow and reflection. So his city below a mirror took no permanent order. In truth, his revulsion erased its origin. Loneliness flowed beneath the bones. One time, he jotted down the first unanswered riddle. Blind when caught, sees when held. Fate, how simple it's supposed to be.
Isang lumang kwento. Hinaula ang isang paham at isinabit sa pinakamatandang bakawan sa malayong isla. Pagtuturo ng matatandang dasal sa mga periko ang kanyang pagkakasala. Doon lamang niya nabatid na maaaring sulatan ang balat ng buhay na tagiwalo. Gabi-gabi siyang nilalagnat matapos magsulat na bahagi ng kanyang kaluluwa ang naikikintal sa bawat titik na kinukutkot at tinutuklap mula sa kaliskis ng ahas dagat. Sa papanoorin niya ito, lumangoy palayo. Sa asinta ng kanyang mata, ang pagniningning ng mga salita sa init at asin. Tanging ito lamang ang alam niyang pamuksa sa pagnanasang binabala-bala ng pangungulila. Isinulat niya ang bayan sa ilalim ng kanyang kulungan at tila kartograpo niyang hinahanay ang lahat ng mga buhon batay sa kanilang saysay at kasaysayan. At kung minsan ay binabatay niya sa galaw ng kanyang anino at refleksyon. Kaya walang permanenteng mukha ang kanyang lungsod sa ilalim ng salamin. Nang totoo, binubura ng kanyang pagkamuhi ang pinagmulan, pero nananalaytay ang pagkamingaw sa ilalim ng buto. Minsan, isinulat niya ang pinakaunang bugtong na hindi nasagutan. Nang mahuli ay bulag, biglang dilat sa palad, kapalaran. Ganun lamang dapat iyon kadali.
After a few months, a reply came, which like him was written on the secret skin. Like the venom from the first discovered fire, I was left unable to breathe. I hate you because I couldn't speak.
Pagkaraan ng ilang buwan, ang pagdating ng tugon. Na tulad niya ay nakasulat sa balat ng tagiwalo. At tulad ng kamandag ng unang pagkakatuklas sa ningas, naiwan akong hindi makahinga. Kinaiisnisan kita dahil hindi ako makapagsalita.
The sage's townfolk came back to him. After the storm, the parrots he thought returned, and spoke in the tone of their god, in accursed screeches. Some grew blisters on his index finger, some torn open by the frequency of their pitch. There was one who heard nothing in his mind except the repetitive sound of stone splashing on water. In the end, they accepted their mistake, but the sage was not there, only an abandoned cage reeking of molted hide. It stuck to the air. Who else could they beg for forgiveness? Who could they ask for wisdom? A time came when two sea crates were found caught in a fishing net, one entwined in another. On their skins, a message was etched. You were like a country that had abandoned me, with nothing prepared for me except silence. In my travels, I found myself asking, in the end, which baggage will become part of myself. I've discarded everything since, and when I turned around, I found a wandering owl, which, like me, kept questioning. And even with such few words, the second message seemed to hold an answer. Each one of us carries a burden. Amidst 1,000 bubbles, you will find yourself, immaculate and bare.
Pinalikan ng kanyang kababayan ang paham. Matapos ang sigwa, nagbalikan ng mga tinuruan niyang periko at nagsipagsalita sa tinig ng kanilang Diyos. Mga ngis-ngis na nangingsisisi. May ilan sa kanila ang tinubuan ng bulutong sa hintuturo. Ang ilan ay napilasan ng kanilang tinig. May isang walang nadidinig sa isip kundi ang paulit-ulit na paglundag ng bato sa tubig. Sa huli, natanggap nila ang kanilang pagkakamali. Ngunit wala na roon ng paham. Abandonadong hawla na may sangsang ng lansa na bakas ng paglulunod. Kumakapit sa hangin. Kanino pa sila hihingi ng kapatawaran? Kanino pa sila hihingi ng karunungan? Minsan, may sumabit na 2 tagiwalo sa lampat. Magkapulupot sa isa't isa. Sa balat, nakaukit ang mga mensahe. Katulad ka ng bayan na sa akin ay nang iwan. Walang ipinabaon kundi katahimikan. Minsan, sa paglalakbay, natagpuan ko ang sariling nagtatanong sa huli. Anong bagahe ang magiging bahagi ng aking sarili? Doon, ipinaiwan sa akin ang lahat at nang ako'y makalingon, natagpuan ko lamang ang isang ligaw na kuwago na katulad ko ay patuloy na nagtatanong. At kahit sa iilan lamang na salita, tila tumutugon ang ikalawang mensahe. Lahat tayo may dinadalang bigat. Sa libo-libong bula, matatagpuan mo ang iyong sarili, basal at hubad.
Okay. Salamat.
Thank you, Farhad.
So, punta naman tayo sa parang maikling Xêro question and answers. So, nakabase ang tula na ito sa Dictionary of the Khazars ni Milorad Pavic. Ano ang tumulak sa inyo para magsulat ng tula tungkol dito?
Itong tagiwalo ay una ko na isulat yung first part, tapos parang hindi ako sa kanya nakontento. So sabi ko, parang kailangan siya ng exploration muna ng solitude, ng pag-iisa. The idea ng pag-iisa. So kinailangan ko siya pigain pa yung konsepto ng pag-iisa dun sa central image ng tagiwalo. So, isa sa mga paborito kong nobela at libro, yung Dictionary of Khazar ni Milorad Pavich. At isa sa mga striking na kwento sa akin doon sa nobela ay yung tungkol sa paham, sa isang sage na isinabit sa hawla tapos para makapag-send siya ng message or para may sabi niya, yung gusto niyang sabihin, ini-inscribe niya sa pawikan. So doon niya sinusulat sa pawikan. Tapos yung mga pawikan na yon, nagsuswim sila, lumalangoy sila, tapos natatagpuan sila ng isang princess. Tapos sumasagot yung princess dun sa pawikan. So naging parang nakahanap yung sage, yung paham ng maaari niyang mapagbilinan ng kwento. So at this point nung sinusulat ko nung naalala ko yung kwento na yon sa Dictionary of Khazar, in-incorporate ko siya. Nasa point ako na dito sa Agwa na nung sinusulat ko na siya, binubuo ko na yung manuscript ng Agwa. Nung binubuo ko na yung manuscript ng Agwa, nasa point na ako na gusto kong maglangkap ng mga legends. So, kahit mga make-up legends lang siya or fables. Tapos, syempre, may appeal sa akin yung pagiging fabulist nung approach nung manuscript nung ginagawa ko siya. So sabi ko, maganda siguro na magkaroon ng fabulist take sa mga sea creatures na binubuo ko para magkaroon lang siya ng iba't ibang dimension at mauwi yung idea ng pagsusulat dun sa libro na may kinalaman din sa ugnayan natin with metaphors, with narratives dun sa mga sinusulat ko. Kaya ako naisip gamitin yung Dictionary of Khazar.
Okay. Salamat. So, napansin ko parang ito lang yung tala sa Agwa, yung gumagamit ng mga tables, no, or mga legends sa buong sequence. So, bilang yung theme ng San Jordi ngayon ay tungkol sa dragons, parang nakakambing ko yung tagiwala sa yung local natin, yung Bakunawa. Bilang may recent din na parang eclipse din ngayon. So, na sa mga future projects niyo, parang may naisip niyo ba na mag-incorporate pa ng mga legends dito sa mga local legends sa tula?
Actually, nagpaplano akong bumuo ng collection ng Masbate poems. Tapos isa sa mga joke ng Masbate ay nagkaroon kami na congresswoman before, si Luz Cleta Bacunawa. Bacunawa yung married name niya. And she was a blue lady ni Melda Marcos. So bahagi siya ng may crony ng mga Marcos. And at the same time, yung anak niya naging presidente na electric cooperative sa akin. So by that time, laging brownout. So laging na-incorporate. Kasi Bacunawa yung head ng so kinakain niya yung ilaw. But other than that, very rich ang Masbate with legends in relation with snakes, dragons, and crocodiles. So growing up, may dalawang legends ako na narinig about dragons. Merong isang kuweba sa amin, yung Batungan Cave, na ang sabi, doon daw nanggaling yung Bakunawa na kumakain ng araw kapag may eclipse. So nung time daw na yon, nung palabas na sana yung Bakunawa, kinidlatan siya. So yung Bakunawa, yung dragon, naging stone. So rock formation siya. Pero yung mga tao doon, in-associate nila yon sa Bakunawa. The same it goes sa isang cliff sa may Aroroy. It's a mining town. Tapos malapit siya sa isa sa mga early settlements ng mga Filipino sa yung Kalatagan Cave. Kung saan may nahukay na
Yung mga
Kalatagan jar.
jar.
Pre-colonial na jar. So burial jar. So merong kwento doon na yung rock cliff na yon na may rock formation na mukhang dragon. So the same story that the dragon emerging from the sea, tapos umaakyat na siya sa lupa para kainin na yung settlement sa lugar. So sabi nila nung paakyat na daw yung dragon, kinidlatan, and then it became a rock formation. So siguro pwede kong i-explore yung idea na yun if I'm going to explore yung Masbate bilang alunan no mismong poetics ko, no mismo ng pagtula. So baka yun, pwedeng magamit siya.
Oo nga, parang rich nga yung mga legends natin tungkol sa mga dragons, pati yung sa mga lizards, mga crocodiles. So,
Siguro dahil tayo very aquatic yung
okay.
yung natin, and it's something that most parang nakakalimutan na archipelagic country tayo. We are surrounded by waters, pero kakaunti lang in terms ng published materials na nagto-talk about water, about katubigan. And it's still being parang mystery para sa atin.
Oo. Tapos sabi niyo din dati, I think parang bestiary yung proyekto ng Agua. O paano niyo naisip na gawin yung project?
It started with the first poem na sinulat ko noong time na to ay yung Butanding. Na-translate ko na rin yung Butanding. So, yung Butanding, I was like 10 years old noon, tapos may
tagal na.
May Butanding talaga na wash ashore sa amin na Butanding. And it's very weird kasi yung area na yon, hindi naman siya, alam ko, hindi talaga siya daanan ng Butanding. So talagang parang naligaw yung Butanding doon, tapos doon na siya doon na siya namatay. So first time ng mga tao na makakita ng ganong kalaking isda, akala nila nga balyena. So tapos at that time merong family friend kami na nagbakasyon ng mga taga Manila. Tapos yun nga, na sila yung nag-explain sa amin na ito whale shark to, ganyan. In-explain sa amin na whale shark nga yung tapos sabi, first time din nila makakita ng whale shark. So kinuna nila ng picture sa Polaroid. So it was the first poem na sinulat ko kasama yung barko na tula na rin na siya, batay rin sa karanasan ko bilang umuuwi ng Masbate, sumasakay ng Ro. At lagi-lagi na-strand din kami sa gitna ng laot. So, yung bagot, yung pagkainip, isinalin ko siya sa tula na yon. So, from there, tapos at that time na sinusulat ko siya, meron akong klase kay Joey Bakiran na MA class na editing at yung pagbubuo ng proyekto. Paano ka bubuo ng isang proyekto sa MA ko. So, MA class. So, yun yung proyekto ko sa kanya. Yung pagbuo ng isang collection na may kinalaman sa tubig. Ang argumento ko nung time na yun is that yun nga, napaka-surrounded tayo ng tubig pero very limited or kakaunti yung mga tula natin. We discussed about water or yung involvement natin sa tubig. So yun yung ginamit kong parang take-off point na isulat yung collection ng Agua. Pagbabalik tanaw yon sa karanasan ko sa Masbate. And at the same time, exploration siya sa ugnayan natin sa tubig. Kaya yung buong collection ng Agua, I discussed that parang yung tubig is a source of life, and at the same time, tagakuha din siya ng buhay. Kaya ako din ginagawa ko siya, medyo may morbidity din siya kasi there are times that the poems in the collection talks about that, and it's my first book and then may ganun siyang morbidity. Pero sabi ko, yan ang ano ng tubig eh. Yan talaga yung paradox niya.
Okay, sige. So, last na question. So, in relation dun sa dictionary of the Khazars, so parang kayo din ay isang tagasali no, ng mga akda. Parang yung mga dati yung projects, more of sa European literature. So, ano ang proseso ng pagsasali mo? At paano kaya ito naka-impluwensya sa iyong pagtula?
Ang pagsasalin naman din talaga, hindi naman siya 100% nagiging faithful sa mismong akda. So more or less nasa 60-70% siya yung ganun. So naging factors siguro na awareness, may certain awareness ako with sounds. So kapag nagbabasa ako ng akda na itatry ko siyang isalin, may awareness na ako. Kunyari, minsan kasi dahil European language siya, third hand na yung salin ko sa Filipino kasi dadaan pa siya sa English. Tapos ako siya isasalin sa Filipino or sa Minasmate. So, nagiging aware ako dun sa tunog ng English translation para maisalin ko siya into Filipino. So, as much as possible, tinatry kong i-capture yung voice no original or yung salin sa English nung akda. So, kapag nasa English siya, kino-close read ko siya, batay na rin sa tunog niya. Para kapag sinalin ko siya, either gagawin ko ba siyang lyrical, gagawin ko ba siyang straightforward. So, kung ang akda naman ay lyrical, kailangan kong ma-pinpoint ko yung mga sounds niya para doon makuha ko yung indayog. Kapag straightforward naman yung akda, lalo na pag prose, doon ko naman nilalaro yung tunog niya. May paglalaro, may mas ako na nalaro na po pwedeng gawin. So, siguro yun yung nakakatulong sa akin dahil nade-develop at na-enhance niya yung awareness ko in terms ng tunog na nagagamit ko kapag sumusulat ako ng sarili kong tula. So, yun yung sa akin ang ng malaking naitutulong ng pagsasali. At the same time, syempre, yung mga imagery na minsan kasi, di ba, minsan may mga image na kumukonekta sa akin or metaphor na kumukonekta sa akin. Kahit sabihin mo pa siyang European experience, pero metaphor, image can be a universal thing then. So, nahuhugot ko siya at nagagamit din sa sarili kong akda.